Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope your day or evening or week or month, whenever you're watching this, is going well. My name is Quinn Jacobson, and we're back to do another edition of this thing we've been calling the creative minds of mortality, or artists and anxiety, looking at how the fear of death or mortality, the knowledge of your death, affects artwork. And today we're going to do something pretty fun. I think you'll enjoy this. If anybody's ever read Camera Lucida by Roland Barthes, you'll enjoy today. If you haven't read it, I put you can go to archive.org and search it and download the PDF if you want to read it. I'll explain here in just a minute who Roland Barthes was and why this is so important to photography. His meditations on photography related to death, very profound. I mean, very, very profound. And we'll look at some of that. And I also want to share a little bit as we go along each week. I want to share a little bit about how I'm connecting this to my own personal work. And you'll see as we go through this stuff what I'm talking about there. Just a quick side note here. I have Sheldon Solomon lined up for Wednesday to have an interview with him. So you can do one of two things. You can either watch it whenever. I'm going to record it. It'll go up on YouTube. And then next week, maybe we can have a discussion on it. If you want to come in Wednesday, let me know. I'll send you the link and you can come in. But I will tape it and put it up, and you can watch it, and we'll talk about it Saturday. But he's been so busy. It's been difficult to get. He's got family, some sisters, I believe, in Florida that he's been trying to move up. He lives in New York, up in the Finger Lakes region.
What time, Quinn?
That is 7 p.m. Eastern, so it would be 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock your time, 5 o'clock my time, 6 o'clock Central, etc. But so if you want to come in, let me know. I'm happy to send you the link. If not, no worries. I've got a great discussion planned with him. We're going to cover some pretty heavy stuff, I hope. And here's the thing regarding death anxiety, terror management theory, and art, there's been almost zero done on this stuff. You saw what Jeff said about it, and what Jeff told me in private. It just hasn't been covered a lot, right? So, and I don't know if it's because of the lack of, probably just a lack of knowledge about how these things work together. But if you've read Camera Lucida, if you've read anything about Diane Arbus or Sally Mann, or really any of these big name photographers, you will see terror management and death anxiety and all these theories, they're completely wrapped up in it. So hello, George. I think that's George there. Good to see you this morning. So let's jump right in, and let me know if you want to come in on Wednesday night with Solomon. That's the only thing that I wanted to kind of make sure that I covered here, because I will forget about it. Asking you to let me know if you want to be in. So here we go. I want to make it a little bit personal today because of Barthes' book, right? Barthes, he's French, right? So Roland Barthes. I don't know. Sorry, French friends. I don't know how to speak the language or the accents, but I call him Barthes. Roland Barthes, butcher English translation of his name. But engaging with the themes of mortality is what we want to talk about. And so when we talk about terror management theory, death anxiety, Becker's theories, and then Solomon, Greenberg, Brzezinski's empirical work on it, what we're talking about is how these things relate to artists. And probably one of the most direct and profound texts, this is from 1980, by the way, is Barthes' book, Camera Lucida. And for those of you that don't know what Camera Lucida is, I've been asked this before. Camera Lucida was one of the first devices to peer through a mirror that you could look at. It would project the image down onto a piece of paper, and you could sketch it, right? Camera Lucida. box, a light and a box, basically, but it's really not a box. Do a Google search on Camera Lucida and you'll see what I mean. He's referencing that because of kind of the first beginnings of taking a scene from nature and fixing it onto a page, although it wasn't photography, right? It was hand drawn, frustrated artists trying to make that work. So anyway, that's what we're going to engage with today. I think you'll enjoy it. I want to start off first with this. If you don't know who Virginia Woolf is, you should get familiar with her. She's just amazing. She's written right in the cradle of death anxiety. This is a quote that it resonates deeply with me. It resonates very deeply with me. And see if it resonates with you. I'm just going to read it here. There's a kind of sadness that comes from knowing too much, from seeing the world as it truly is. It is the sadness of understanding that life is not a grand adventure, but a series of small, insignificant moments. That love is not a fairy tale, but a fragile, fleeting emotion. That happiness is not a permanent state, but a rare, fleeting glimpse of something we can never hold on to. And in that understanding, there is a profound loneliness, a sense of being cut off from the world, from other people, from oneself. You know, to me, as I read that, what she is, in my mind, as my mind has always gone right to Becker, talking about seeing how the world truly is, seeing what reality is. And if we were to really come to terms with what we're talking about here, we're talking about all of us human beings existing in a world that's completely meaningless, born in a time and place that we had no control over, given to parents or siblings and family and friends and whatever, no control over any of that. And we're plopped down and we're supposed to find what we're doing here. Well, I think Woolf addresses really clearly in this quote this idea that Becker first proposed, saying, let's look at the world how it truly is. And how is the world? How is it? It is rough. It is relentless. It is unforgiving. And you're going to die. And that's what she's addressing here. I know it sounds bleak, but it really isn't. It's trying to come, like Albert Camus, remember the quote, come to terms with death, thereafter anything is possible. That's what she's addressing here. So at the end of the day, we are talking about having an interaction with the reality of life. It's meaningless. We have no control over it, and we don't know why we're here. Right? That's the bottom line. That's the reality of it. And if you want to dig down deeper, you can say we're animals. We're no more significant than a potato or a lizard, as Solomon says. And we have to find meaning. So we find meaning, and we assign this great value to my purpose. Why do I exist? Why am I here? What am I doing? I think Woolf really hits, just like Becker, hits the nail on the head and says, let's address this. This is the reality of what we're doing here. So I think this fits beautifully into artwork. And I want to share something with you here. Oh, Chris can't find. Okay, let me put it up here, Chris, and you can jump in here. I want to share something with you from. Well, let me share it first. I'm going to read it first, and then I'll talk about it. This is some of you know this. Visions in mortality, and that preposition is important. Not of, in mortality. I'm gonna read this briefly, and we're going to have there's Chris. Hello, Chris. We're going to have a little discussion on it. This work addresses the reality of life, which is death. The photographs and text are meant to communicate the intense and complicated process of life and our struggle with mortality as we approach death. Whether life is short or long, it inevitably consists of much pain, suffering, depression, hurt, confusion, boredom, and misery, with only a sprinkle now and then of happiness, joy, love, peace, honor, and understanding. So many people are on a futile quest to attain happiness and understanding through physical, materialistic, intellectual means that they neglect to realize their failure and ultimately find themselves in a mortality crisis. This project deals with both long-term reality, the long-term reality of life, and the few and far between sprinkles of the good stuff. It represents what I and many others see and feel and experience as a human race in today's culture. Overall, this imagery communicates that both life and death are frightening, beautiful, and mysterious conditions. And then I just asterisk the top. In artistic or literary context, visions in mortality, the preposition in and not of, might describe the ways which death and mortality are depicted or explored through visual art, literature, or other forms of creative expression. So what I wanted to share with you there is, this is an artist statement of mine from 1993 at one of my first photographic exhibitions. I made work. I do have a couple. Let me show you. I've got a little baggie of goodies here. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I will. I think I showed you the poems, but here's how organized I am, but it's still here. Polaroids, manipulated Polaroid, 1993, a bag of goodies. Let me just show you. Here, let me do this. Let me just show you a couple here. I want to stop screen. I want to go in here and say, I have tons of these. And what I did is I transferred these. They're all manipulated. My big influence at the time was Charles Bukowski, the poet, and Lucas Samaras. And if you don't know who Lucas Samaras is, look him up. Wonderful stuff. Let me just share. I'll just share a couple with you. I don't want to bore you to death with them. I love this one a lot. These, other than that show 30 years plus years ago, these have never really been seen. This is a whole series I did on a stripper, prostitute. But they all deal with themes of death. That's me in 1967 in a zoo with my sister. They all have stories. This is me sitting on Ernest Hemingway's grave in Ketchum, Idaho. He blew his head off with a shotgun. And I went up to, my mother lived in the same town, Ketchum, Idaho, where he was. I have a couple of those. But anyway, the idea here is that poem, or not poem, but oh, look at this. This will throw you back too here. Check that out. Anybody remember that? Yeah, everybody remembers that. So all of these images somehow connected to death and mortality. And so 30 some years ago, oh, you love Bukowski, awesome. That's great. Yeah, I do too. I do too. 30 some years ago, I was dealing with these ideas or trying to, right? I had no clue of what I was doing or what I was talking about, in the sense of, I'd never heard of Becker. Terror management theory, at that time wasn't even out. They were still working on it, right? So here I am. And this is where this is where I hope to make a difference. This is where you can really see education in a different light. So here I am, an undergraduate student, freshly out of the military. And someday I'll show you my great big work called Soul Dyer. It's a play on soldier. And I did these gigantic 4 foot by 8 foot black and white prints of photographs that I made in the military. So I was a combat photographer. I was an infantryman for 3 years, and I was a combat photographer for 3 years. And so I took those experiences, and I really do believe art, and we talked about this before, I really do believe art needs to be connected to something personal to you. I want to put these back in here real quick. Personal to you, and that it has great significance in the idea of storytelling. I think is really some kind of, not a didactic panel of moral shortcomings and all that stuff, but definitely something you're personally connected to. Let me go back to this. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you. When I read Virginia Woolf's quote again, I just man, this quote resonates so closely to what I was dealing with way back in the day. And this is why I'm so excited about these ideas, is because people don't understand the context and the history I have with these theories. I go back. The first time I picked up a camera was about this, and we're going to get into Roland Barthes now, and we're going to talk about this, engaging with themes of mortality. So my bottom line is my work has always engaged themes of mortality, and yours probably has too. We just haven't, deconstructed it as such. So Camera Lucida by Barthes is a profound meditation on photography, but it also deeply engages with themes of mortality. This is what people miss about this book. Not really, but people kind of overlook. We're going to deconstruct it here. And you can take this to your classrooms or pass it on to your friends and family. And we're going to talk about Barthes like very few people have ever talked about this book. He reflects on the nature of photographs as they relate to the passage of time, memory, and death. Beautiful. Love it. So let's talk about these. If you haven't read the book, it's really quick and easy to go through this. He was a French philosopher, literary scholar. Camera Lucida is a tiny little book. You can download the PDF and read it. It's tiny. You can read it in a couple of hours. It's like a big long poem, right? He's not a photographer. He's only addressing photography as it relates to death, and specifically his personal experience with death. And we'll talk about that, the Winter Garden photograph. But so keep that in mind. This is really important to remember about Barthes. He's a writer, a philosopher. He's French. I don't know if he's really a polymath, but he's engaged in other activities, right? So, and not a photographer, not a visual artist. So this is really profound. I love to hear thinkers and philosophers talk about art forms that they don't participate in. Susan Sontag, for example, on photography, those 7 essays, wonderful book. But let's go on this. Photography as a trace of mortality. I doubt you're ever going to see this kind of review on this book anywhere else, because we're really going to tie it. I think that Barthes would be proud of us today if he could watch this or listen to this. Photography as a trace of mortality. Barthes views photography as a medium that captures a moment in time, preserving it indefinitely. However, this act of preservation also highlights the inevitability of death. A photograph is a certificate of presence for something that once existed but may no longer be, linking the image directly to the concept of mortality. The idea that the subject of the photograph may now be dead or will eventually die, for sure, is intrinsic to the photograph itself. Right off the bat, right? Just let's get to the heart of the matter. Let's wrap our arms around this thing and give it a big hug. This is what photography is about. Is he the first person to talk about photography as memento mori? No. I just mentioned Sontag. Deanne Arbus. There's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch of them that have actually addressed, not as deep as Barthes, but has addressed photography as a reminder of death. And if you deeply think about it, you'll get it. So let's talk about the Winter Garden photograph. Barthes discusses a specific photograph of his mother, which he refers to as the Winter Garden photograph. This image becomes a focal point for his meditation on loss, memory, and mourning. The photograph for Barthes captures not just his mother's likeness, but the essence of her being. The essence of her being. Making the photograph an embodiment of both her life and her death. Beautiful, beautiful. Who's ever seen the Winter Garden photograph? Anybody ever seen the Winter Garden photograph? No. No, you've never seen it, and you never will. He never published it, but he describes it and talks about it in length in his book. And this Winter Garden photograph is the impetus for his philosophical views about photography. And it's like it says, it's a photograph of his mother as a little girl, actually. And if you don't know what a winter garden is, it's an enclosed. When I lived in Germany, on our house, most houses had this enclosed, what they call a winter garden, or an enclosed kind of patio area, and they call yards gardens. So it's a winter garden. It's a place you can go outside in the winter. So she's standing there as a small child, and somebody made a photograph of her. This is what Barthes is talking about here. This is the big one for me, and we're going to go into this in some detail today. The punctum and death. So Barthes came up with two wonderful ideas, the studium and the punctum. And when you understand these concepts, you can start employing them in your work or start seeing them. I'm going to show you a couple examples of my punctum in my work. The studium is built in, right? That's the context of the photograph. That's, Jeffrey's making landscape plates up in the Vancouver area, BC. It's this time of year. It's this place. All those things are fixed, right? But the punctum is something different. And we're going to talk about that in depth here in a second. Barthes introduced the concept of the punctum, the element of a photograph that strikes or wounds the viewer personally. For Barthes, the punctum often relates to an awareness of mortality. Absolutely it does. A photograph's ability to evoke a personal, often painful recognition of time passing and the certainty of death makes the medium a poignant reminder of human finitude. I love this. I absolutely adore these ideas in photography and art. And what Barthes has done here is he's given us words and ideas to apply to not only photographs we see, but to think about when we make photographs, which is really super important, right? Especially in the context we're talking about here. Photography and that has been. I love this one too. Barthes argues that every photograph contains an inherent memento mori, right? Remember, you're going to die. A reminder of death, because it testifies to a moment that is irretrievably past. It's gone. Every photograph is that. Every photograph in reality should be a reminder of death, what's coming, and what's always been. The phrase "that has been," which Barthes uses to describe the essence of photography, underscores the connection between photography and the inevitability of death. Each photograph confirms the passage of time and the eventual disappearance of the subject from the world. God, if you just take these words in and just dwell on them and chew on them, chew the cud, as they say, on them for a little while, these things will start to deeply resonate with you. You'll start seeing photography, at least in this context, very differently. And not in a morbid way, in a real way, right? Like Virginia Woolf said, let's deal with this. Let's deal with the reality of this stuff. Barthes' personal mourning, not mourning as in daytime, but mourning as in grief. The book is also a personal journey for Barthes, written after the death of his mother. His exploration of photography is intertwined with his grieving process, making the text a reflection on how we use images to confront, deny, and process the reality of death. Love it. For Barthes, photography becomes a way to grapple with his own experience of loss and the transient nature of life. That paragraph there should give you more fodder. That paragraph should give you enough fodder in your life to make images that you'd never have to address anything else. That passage right there. That's enough to do it. I think what happens in the world today, we get so wrapped up in distractions and other things that we don't have time to deeply think or have quiet time or anything like that, right? We're consumed with, I know I am. The computer's there. Oh, look at this, do that, watch this. It's crazy. And so if we sit with these ideas quietly for some time, I can guarantee you they'll change your mind about how you think about this stuff. Camera Lucida has been seen as a meditation on mortality through the lens of photography. Barthes examines how photographs serve as a reminder of death, both in their ability to capture the fleeting nature of life and in their role as objects of memory for those who have died. So we understand those concepts quite well. We don't ever tie them to the reality of death. So I'm going to read, this is from the book, and I want to just take a second to deal with this. For death must be somewhere in a society. If it is no longer, or less intensely, in religion, it must be elsewhere. Perhaps in this image, which produces death while trying to preserve life, contemporary with the withdrawals of rights, photography may correspond to the intrusion in our modern society of an asymbolic death, outside of religion, outside of ritual, a kind of abrupt dive into literal death. Barthes examines the connection between society, death, and photography here. He argues that as a traditional rituals and religious practices around death wane, we know that, right? We're wrapped up in that denial. Society must find new ways to address the concept of mortality. Barthes highlights that photography, while primarily focused on capturing life, paradoxically emphasizes death by preserving moments that are already past. He introduces the idea of asymbolic death, referring to a raw and immediate representation of death that lacks the cultural rituals and meanings that historically accompanied it. So he's pulling everything out of context and say, look at it for what we're dealing with today. Let's look at reality here, what a photograph is. In a modern context, photography confronts us with death in a direct and often jarring manner, fulfilling a societal need to engage with mortality in an era when traditional means are fading. This is what all the great thinkers, Nietzsche, that famous quote, God is dead. He was talking about how for millennia, maybe longer, human beings have relied on religion, their cultural construct, to ward off their death anxiety. That's why Nietzsche said, with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and all the new technology coming, he said, God is dead. We have these other things now we're going to start looking as God and leaning on. That's what Barthes is talking about here. He's talking about traditional means fading. Ultimate, Barthes posits that photography serves as a contemporary lens through which we face the reality of death, presenting it outside the comforting frameworks of past rituals. And that's the big difference. We're looking at photography in a context that we've been set up to look at it in. And Barthes is arguing, let's look at it differently. Let's try something different here. And have it, Pablo said, just wanted to say hi, I must leave. Hope to see you later. And thank you, Pablo. It's good to see you, brother. He's in Argentina. He's in Buenos Aires, Argentina. But anyway, so let's go on. Here it is. Here's the big one, okay? Don't be afraid of these words, studium and punctum. Don't be afraid of them. You'll understand what they mean here in just a second. Studium. Barthes introduces the concept of studium to describe a general intellectual interest in a photograph. According to Barthes, the studium represents the cultural, linguistic, and political interpretation that a viewer brings to a photograph, right? So we're talking in context. If you're looking at an American photograph, with American flags and presidential candidates and this and that, you're looking at it in that context. You're in America, you're this, that, all that stuff. That's what he's talking, the language. That's what he's talking about here. It encompasses the viewer's ability to analyze and understand the photographer's subject matter, composition, and context based on their education and knowledge. Essentially, the studium is the polite rational appreciation of a photograph that stems from undertaking its historical, social, and cultural meanings. Meaning that you're going to approach a photograph like everybody approaches a photograph and say, oh, that's cool, oh, that's neat, never really giving much thought about what's actually happening in the photograph, or the context. The context of the photograph is apparent, but not going any deeper than that. Barthes contrasts this with the concept of punctum, which is a more personal, emotional response that a photograph can evoke. While the studium engages with the photo on a more intellectual level, the punctum is the detail or element that pricks or wounds the viewer emotionally, creating a more profound and often subconscious connection to the image. There's another reference to what we're talking about there. So now, my favorite, let's talk about the punctum. So the studium is kind of fixed. It's kind of the same for everybody. It's the context, the language, the political, social environments of the day, all that stuff. But the punctum is very personal. He defines punctum as the element of a photograph that pierces or pricks the viewer on a personal and emotional level. Unlike the studium, which refers to the general cultural and intellectual interpretation of a photograph, the punctum is a specific detail or feature that unexpectedly captures the viewer's attention and evokes a deep emotional response. This response is often unique to each individual, arising from personal memories, associations, or emotions. The punctum is not something that can easily be explained or predicted. It is more of a visceral reaction, like, your immediate reaction that disrupts the viewer's conscious engagement with the photograph, creating a powerful personal connection that goes beyond mere understanding. Barthes describes the punctum as something that shoots out of the photograph, something that rises from the scene, shoots out of it like an arrow and pierces the viewer, leaving a lasting impression that is felt rather than intellectually comprehended. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So what is punctum? I'm going to ask you guys to bring some stuff back at some point and address Barthes' punctum here. I'm going to address it today. Can the photographer or artist create punctum? Possibly. Let me give you an example of my punctum. My punctum here's one example of punctum. This is a piece of work. Let me see if I can engage this fully. Can I do that fully? Just put it on the screen. No. Anyway, okay, you guys have it full screen. You can see that image. This is from my work in the shadow of Sun Mountain. This is up in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, where I lived for several years. And the project deals with the Tabawatch Ute tribe, the Tabawatch Native Americans, the Indians that lived there. I had 12 acres of their land up there. For 3 years, I'd study and learn and pick and photograph the medicinal plants, the ceremonial plants, the ritualistic plants, the landscapes, the fauna and flora, animals and plants. And this happens to be a mullein leaf. A mullein is a medicinal plant that you can smoke for lung infections. You can drink it as a tea, those kinds of things. This is a Ute pottery bowl by the Ute artist Posey. It's a beautiful pot, and I've used it in a lot of the plants that I photographed. So where is my punctum? My punctum, and that's the negative on the right, obviously, and the palladium print on the left. The punctum for me here, you'd think it would be that bullet hole in the mullein, but it actually, my punctum is that little slice down below, that little tiny shape. It's almost like a little razor went through and cut a little piece like that, almost like another, or like a piece of a fragment of the bullet going off and hitting another part of the plant, the leaf there. That is punctum. Can you create punctum? Maybe. When I try, I'm never successful. When I don't try, sometimes I'm successful. And it's all personal. So it's nothing you can say, oh, I'm going to have punctum. Somebody's going to see something in this, I have people writing me talking about details in photographs that I've never noticed before in my own work. So, punctum is very personal that way. Let's go to another one. Does that make sense? I hope. Here's another one. See if you guys like this one. Where is my punctum? This is called the struggle. This is actually a green law calotype photograph, a green law negative, paper negative, way back in the day, deconstructed his recipes and printed, made some paper negatives. They're beautiful. And this is a palladium print on the left. So where is my punctum here? My punctum is on these fingers on this tree right here. And if you could see the print, the punctum really is strong in this one. I know there's the emotion going on in the image and the struggle and all that, but the fingers really, they're just, I've always been engaged with punctum, but I've never had a word for punctum. And since I read Barthes, I can address it. So what I'd like you guys to do is, as you're looking at your photographs or looking at other photographs or anything, but specifically photographs, see if there's a punctum that jumps out at you. See if there's anything that stands out that you might that might be attractive that way. I wanted to show just a quick, this is like 2 minutes, and some of you have probably already seen this, but I want to show you real live. People always ask me, show some of your negatives, show some of the, so, okay, here's just a quick, this is in the middle of Shadow Mountain, and I'm just going to play the video. Short, I hope. Greetings and salutations. I wanted to jump in here and just show a negative and a print. I just completed this tone Cali type print of the white sage. Gorgeous, absolutely stunning. And the plant. And my punctum on this one is that bright over that leaf right there. And if you can see the print, value to the Native Americans, especially the Tabawatch from the Ute tribe, the band that lived here. Here's the negative. I just made that today. Printed excellent, of course. I got this technique down, so I wanted to share that with you. Sorry. With you. See what you think. Beautiful stuff. Thank you. So there's some ideas behind this are twofold, basically. One, to start thinking in terms of how you don't have to, your photographs don't need to scream death and death anxiety. I think that's too obvious a lot of times, but I think it would be healthy or helpful for artists to address more. Sorry, I'll get out of here. Let me see. I think I just have and then Sheldon. I think it would help artists to address more of these ideas in the sense of work. If you look at it through Barthes' theories. So if you're not engaging with direct terror management and Becker and all those kinds of ideas, read Barthes' book. It's short, tiny. Download the PDF. It's free, and start trying to engage and start looking at your own photography or your own art and see if you can identify the punctum if there is one. Engage other people with it. See what they think. So anyway, that is what I have today, and we're only 20 minutes away, but that's what I wanted to engage with you today. We are actually going, ironically enough, we are going to an art show here in 20 minutes. It's really kind of interesting. When we're out doing our thing every morning, running up and down the hill here, we ran into a gentleman. His name is George, and he was out exercising, and we every once in a while would see him out there and we'd chat with him. And the other day he said, "Hey, you got to come to the art show the Franciscan monks place. They have a monastery. They have this big art show here in Las Cruces every year. The Franciscan. It's not Catholic art. It's just held there. But George, the guy we ran into here, he is moving. In fact, he's moving back to Texas. He's been here for like 20 years, and he taught at the university, and he taught pottery. So he's got some pottery in the show. There's some paintings. There's some photography. There's some other other stuff we can look at. But I thought that was interesting. We have been around, but we've never been to a proper kind of art show, gallery show. So we're going to go today. It opened at 9 o'clock this morning, and we're going to try to beat a little bit of the crowd and go over there around 11 after we're finished here. But so it's interesting I haven't engaged a lot here yet creatively with people. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to take it slow here. I'm not going to jump into anything too heavy. I've already had some things go on that I'm not really interested in doing. Everybody wants workshop. No workshop. I don't want to do workshops. I want to create work. And so that's my focus now. And secondly, as we move through this, and you're going to see me here start probably in the next few weeks. I have space out here. I'm going to put my dark room back up. I have all my spinning door, my sinks. I've got all my gear in that garage out there. And I set my chemistry up. I'm going to build just a simple 2x4 framed in space out there that I can work in. And I'm going to start making some plates here. The light here is amazing. I can't wait to see what collodion does here. I found the lower elevations with that kind of noise in the atmosphere really helps wet collodion. When you're up almost out of oxygen, where I was for all those years, it's harsh. The light there's so much UV. It's just crazy harsh. So I'm on my way to do that. I'm trying to get set up. And so hopefully not only can we share some of these ideas, but I can start sharing some of the work that I'm playing with, the ideas that I'm playing with. And I always find that's helpful for people. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that kind of thing? And I'm granted, I've had a lot of lead time on this, like 3 decades. And so why I'm so excited about it is because I found people and ideas that explain my preoccupation with this. And my goal is to make work that addresses these ideas, but also engages the viewer, also provides the viewer, value aesthetically. And I'm not opposed to, I want to be somewhat subtle about everything, but I'm not opposed to being, doing I've got some ideas that might really be interesting and aggressive. Let's say aggressive, not, I hope not stupid and confrontational, but aggressive. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next while. Does anyone have anything at all?
I do.
Yes.
Do you think, Quinn, that some of the punctum is lost when you're viewing a picture or art or whatever on a computer screen? I know that I have more of a reaction. Sometimes there'll be some things that I see that I go like, it'll take my breath, but not real often. But if I can see it in person, because you've got that human element, that artist touched that. And
yes.
I mean, I think that so much is lost with photography now with the internet. I mean, and like what you're talking about, like with the death thing, with so many people have just taken pictures, they're just taking pictures.
Yeah, so true. Yes, I agree with you, Bernadette.
I mean, we are. I might sound snobbish, but we are a unique group here that looks at it much more deeply than just an iPhone.
I agree. I agree. And I'll share two things with you. First off, I totally agree with your point about being in the flesh and seeing something physical. I could go in that little room right there. It's where I store all my negatives and prints, and it's crammed full of them. I could bring one out and show you on the screen here.
Mhm.
Be totally different than handing it to you in person and you looking at the rich texture of that print or plate. Yeah, totally, totally. A lot of that is lost. And then secondly, to your point, yesterday I had this crazy thought, and this happens occasionally, but probably more often than I'd like to admit. But I had this crazy thought yesterday about just completely going offline. Like
Oh,
just drop,
I've done
drop.
it. I've
Yeah,
done it.
I mean, no, I mean off.
No,
Like
yeah,
not
but
even not here.
I've done it before. No
Yeah.
internet, no nothing for, and then just read books and stuff. I get it.
Well, yeah, and what I'd do, my purpose of that, what I would do, I wouldn't share one photograph, one painting, no artwork at all. And I'd put my work together in the next couple, 3 years, and I'd put the book out about all of this, just on the cold. Nobody's ever, those photographs and paintings have never been online. They've never been digitized.
Right.
That is a fantasy for me. That is something that truly, truly excites me.
Mhm.
Now the question is would I be able to do it? Excuse me. Would I be able to do it? Because I get pinged so often.
You can do it.
I get a little bit of email every week, and people are asking me.
You can do it. You can do it.
And then you'd be emailing me saying, "Come back on YouTube."
No,
I can't.
no,
I can't. Bernadette.
I totally get it because I've done it before, and people just look at me like I'm crazy. Like you go to the library and they're like, well, we'll email you this. I'm like, no, you can't. They don't understand when you say, I don't have an email. I don't have internet at home. It's like,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about going that far.
oh,
I was just thinking about just my artwork and my ranting. Here's the problem. Here's the dilemma that I have, and not that it has anything to do with adulation or likes or how many views. I couldn't care what. I don't care about that. The problem I have is I get so excited.
sharing.
Yeah, to have revelations, to have these breakthroughs, to have these ideas come full on. And everyone listening to this or watching this, at some point, if you deeply engage yourself with these things, deeply think about these ideas and really wrap your head around them, and you start making work that's leaning that way, or if you're making work and you can assign and see these ideas in there, you will just, you'll know how I feel. And I know these things are hard to get our heads around right now. And what does this mean? Why are we here? Hey, COVID, I'm tired of being on these Zoom channels and all, I get it. But the idea is to share ideas, to share information really excites me to uplift and I benefit from it as well. So that's the hard part for me. I'd have a hard time doing that. I wouldn't have a hard time not sharing, but the photographs or whatever artwork I'm doing is so we're visual artists. So the whole point is to see something. But then again, you're so right about it. Half the time, like I just showed my mullein leaf with a bullet hole in it, doesn't translate very well. I mean it does, but it's I could show you the negative and the print. If you held that negative and you held that print, no, you'd be, oh my God, just the details in it, just that experience. And remember, Bernadette, the punctum, as Barthes describes it, is something small and something very, just a little tiny piece of the image somewhere that really does something for you. Let me do something here real quick since we have a second. I'll get Bart's Italian. gun to, let's see, theories. Yeah, okay, here we go. I haven't looked this up. Here we go. I found it. Okay, good. I found it. Jeffrey might know this because he's read the book, but we're going to, let me see if I can pull this off and just make it standalone image. And I want to show you the example that Barthes gives for us in his punctum. Here we go. Present, share screen, window, Chrome. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, guys, I'm always doing this crap. Here we go. Window, there it is. Share. So this is the example he gives in the book. And if you read the book, you'll see this. Where's the punctum, would you say? Where's your punctum in this photograph? And this is a William Klein photograph, by the way. Yeah, the smile? Yeah, okay, good. Bernadette says this. What about you, Jeffrey?
I think the holding the hands.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 people commented on this. Barthes, his punctum, the missing teeth. Oh boy, the missing teeth. The obvious punctum for the general viewer?
The gun.
Of course, yeah. Then the second person commenting on this was, yeah, that's another powerful punctum. Just the awkwardness, the weirdness, I have a little punctum going on with the eyes of the little boy, especially that one with the whites of the eyes, right? So as you start evaluating, especially your own photography, see if you can find a punctum in your work. And if you can't, or other people can't, start addressing, showing work to other people and see if they find any punctum or anything that relates to that in the work. Because it will change how you view this piercing or this idea of personally moved by it, deeply moved by it. So yeah, cool, awesome. That's all I have, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. What else? Again, Wednesday, Sheldon Solomon. We'll go deep into the rabbit hole on art. I have a wonderful paper that Jeff sent me. Let me read the name of it real quick for you, since we have a minute or two here. I'm usually going way over. The name of the paper, and if you guys want this, you let me know, and I'm happy to send it to you. Remember, though, Jeff is a scientist, right? Is this the louder mark? Oh, no, wait. Yes. Let me share this. This is a paper, and if you want it, I will definitely send it to you. Chrome tab? No? I thought I opened it. 1 second here. Oh. Yeah. Louder. Yeah, okay. This paper I found fascinating because I happen to engage in modern art quite a bit. And it's quite interesting, the examples or the ideas they come up with in this paper. God dang, man. I wasn't prepared to do this. That's why. Okay, here we go. And I have the Barthes book too. If you want it, I'm happy to send that to you as well too. Okay, here we go. Downloads. There it is. Share. So this is a paper called Windows into Nothingness, Terror Management, Meaninglessness, and Negative Reactions to Modern Art. So what Greenberg, Solomon, and Pazinski did is they had a control group, and then they had a group that reminded them of their death, and they went through looking at art, and especially they call out. Let me scroll down here. Sorry, they call out abstract art. There's the review, the summary, but down. If you want it, I'll give it to you. But they talk about the results of the people that are reminded of their death versus the people that aren't reminded of their death, and what happens to if they like art or not. And the people reminded of their death hate art. They can't stand it. Why do you think that is? Any ideas? If I'm reminded, just the mortality salience, right? Death is on my mind. Now look at this piece of artwork and tell me what you think about it. Ugh, what is that? I can't stand it. What is it? Why do you think that is? Any ideas? Just a guess? No? Okay, I'll lay it on you. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I just think maybe because it doesn't make sense to them.
And what does not making sense mean?
It's like they feel that's not as important.
Yeah, and it creates anxiety, right? So when we don't understand, so what's the biggest thing we don't understand? Maybe
life.
Life, and more importantly,
death.
Yeah, right. So they make a really beautiful correlation, and you're spot on, Jeffrey. They make a beautiful correlation with the psychological underpinnings of us being confused or like something that doesn't make sense to us. We don't like it. Because it reminds us of our death. Really, in essence, it does. We don't know that. It's outside of our consciousness, but that's what's bugging us. Oh, here's somebody, Wendy. Wendy, Lorimer, happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. I love old graveyards. They're full of reminders that it's you next. Skull and crossbones everywhere. Yeah. Old graveyards. See, this is what I'd love. This is what I'd love to have happen, Wendy. I would love to sit down with photographers, and man, there's a lot of them that go into graveyards and make photographs. I'd love to sit down with them and have a chat about why they're doing that, right? And you just said they're full of reminders that it's you next. You're right about that. But okay, so you know that, but how does that affect your life? And why are you making the photographs, right? Not you specifically, Wendy, but why is a person making photographs in a graveyard? See, and this is where I was for so many years. I was dancing around, even writing the words out. I read that to you. That's what I wrote 32 years ago, right? Struggling with this, trying to dance these ideas around in my head, not having answers for it. So I would love to sit down with all you graveyard photographers, or have you come in and tell us about all your graveyard photographs. I would love that. Honestly, I would love to see what you think about that, or how you're thinking about that. And my question, that's right, George. Yeah, exactly. Come to terms with it. I would ask you, Wendy. They're full of reminders that it's you next. That's absolutely true. How does that affect your life? When you know it's you next, how does that affect your life? Those are the big questions for me. Okay, you got it, Jeffrey. I'll send you the paper. Absolutely. So that is kind of the gist of today. And yeah, send me an email if you want it on Solomon. If you don't, that's fine too. Again, you don't have to do anything here, obviously. I still love you whether you show up or not. You can badmouth. I still love you, man. Don't worry about it. So let me know. I will see you next week with at least some really, really interesting points of my conversation, or our conversation with Sheldon on Wednesday night. And bring your questions. If you have not, and Bernadette, I know you've got questions for Sheldon. Sheldon will. I'm going to address you, not you specifically, Bernadette. I wouldn't do that to you, but I'm going to address people having, and this is most people having a difficult time connecting the dots with this whole death thing. I want him. I think he can give you a really good explanation, and especially in the context of art. Now, I already had him on. God, was that probably a year and a half ago? I don't know. I've lost track of time. I had him on this channel before, and we did talk about art a lot, and we had some people in, but we only kind of scratched the surface. I want to. The point of this is to go longer and go deeper, and I hope we can do that. So, well, that was quick. Thank you, George. That was quick, right? And we will be back next week with same bat channel, same bat station, same everything, but with the Solomon video. Join me Wednesday if you can. Stay healthy and happy. Stay above ground. I'll try to do the same thing, and I'll let you know how the art show goes. We're going to go check it out. So you guys have a great weekend, or whenever you're watching it. Bye-bye. Ciao.